Today's topic is all about compliance, cyber compliance in the Baltics, challenges, responsibilities, and what comes next. Besides me, we have great guest speakers today. So first of all, Principal Solution Engineer from the international company Kaseya, offering different cybersecurity solutions for you guys. We have Bjorn Linen. And then we also have Dr. Virgilijus Dirma, Deputy Director at Infobalt and Vice Chair in Consumer Policy Working Group for Digital Europe. So I will give you a few minutes so that you can introduce yourself, guys, because you will be doing that way better than me. So maybe we can start with you, Bjorn.
Oh, that's nice. So thank you, Camille. Welcome all. Thank you for your precious time in your busy agenda this morning. As the name suggests here, I am Bjorn Lenen, Solution Engineer at Kaseya. I've been doing this job for now almost 9 years at Kaseya. But I'm in the IT industry for over 25 years, and the name doesn't mention it here, but I am CISSP certified because I prefer IT security quite a bit over everything else in IT, not just installing a workstation and talking tech. And today I'm here in this webinar with Dr. Virgilijus, so let me hand over to you.
Thank you, Born. Thank you, Camille. My name is Virgilijus Dirma. I represent Infobalt, the leading digitech association in Lithuania. We're bringing together more than 180 members from the technology, business, innovation, academic, and public sectors. At Infobalt, we work at the intersection of technology, policy, cybersecurity, innovation, and digital transformation. A large part of my work focuses on European Union digital regulation and ecosystem development, including topics such as cybersecurity, NIS2, AI governance, digital resilience, compliance, and the broader impact of European digital policy on business and society. And I work closely with industry leaders, policymakers, public institutions, and international partners to help strengthen Lithuania and the Baltic region digital competitiveness, while also ensuring that innovation develops in a secure, responsible, and sustainable way. Especially today with rapidly evolving cyber threats and increasing regulatory requirements, I think it's extremely important to maintain strong dialogue between industry, regulators, and technology providers.
Yes.
That's why discussions like today are very valuable, and because compliance is no longer only a technical and legal topics, but a strategic issue affecting resilience, trust, competitiveness, and the future of digital economy. Sorry.
Thank you for the introduction. Dr. Virgilijus, you said it great. So today, as you can see, our audience, as you can see, we have professionals from a bit different approach, that have a bit of a different approach to this compliance problem, and they can give us both perspectives. So from Kaseya, since it's an international company working all around the world, they can give us a bit of a global perspective, and Virgilijus can give us a perspective on the Baltic region and Europe. So we're going to be using you guys. Thank you for letting us use you, and discussing this topic. So let's just get into it. Compliance, as mentioned, everyone talks about it, but there are few that truly embed it into their daily operations, and with all of these different compliance standards, today's focus will be mostly on NIS2, but it's important to remember that there's a bunch of other standards that we have to abide to by law or by requirement from partners and so on. So we have GDPR, DORA, we have PCI DSS, ISO standards, a lot. And when there's so many things that are required from you, it's quite easy to get lost in all the noise. So with all these things in mind, what do you think is the main driving force actually for compliancy? Is it just like a checkbox exercise, or is it driven by regulators, the customer, the risk? Why do companies choose to do it? Maybe Bjorn, you can start, and then we can get a perspective from Dr. Virgilius too.
Yeah, that's good. Well, to answer one question, it may seem a checkbox exercise, but that is not the intention. I think if we focus on NIS2, but also GDPR and ISO, it is a discussion that management needs to have. It's not an IT discussion. IT is involved, but it's mostly a legal discussion. And sometimes it's a standard that you want to abide because it opens up a new area where you can do business. Good example is ISO certification. Some really large organizations don't do business with organizations that are not ISO certified. DORA and NIS2 are invented, created because we saw in the European Union a lot of supply chain attacks, and we needed to have an answer for that. So first of all, EU member states are not pointing fingers at each other, but also me as an organization, I need to transfer risk to someone or an organization that delivers that service to me. So it was let's call it a stick to hit with, although that sounds negative. But that is my take on this. And it's not an IT discussion. There's a lot of IT involved, but it's not only an IT discussion. But maybe Dr. Virgilius has a different approach. Yeah.
How do you see this particular question?
Thank you, Bjorn. I fully agree with you that it's not just IT question. And I think in the Baltic region, the compliance landscape is becoming increasingly important because cybersecurity, like you say, is no longer seen only as IT issue. It's now part of the business continuity, national resilience, of course, and competitiveness. The key regulatory framework is, of course, NIS2, but companies also need to consider GDPR. Soon we will see something new in this place in GDPR section. Of course, companies also need to consider sector-specific rules, critical infrastructure requirements, cloud security expectations, supply chain security, and increasingly AI-related regulation. For Baltic companies, I think the main challenge is that compliance is not just about ticking boxes. It's about building internal governance, knowing who is responsible for how risks are managed, how incidents are reported, and how suppliers are controlled. So I would say the most important shift is from formal compliance to operational resilience.
Yeah, so we're kind of having the move from the checkbox to actually implementing it so that we have control over our environment. You also, both of you mentioned the fact that it shouldn't be just IT people thinking of compliancy in general. Do you think that is the biggest misconception when it comes to compliancy in general, or is it something else?
I think if let's approach it from one step back. Once an organization decides, let's go for ISO 27001 as an example, that is probably a decision made on board level. But what you oftentimes see is that quite quickly that transfer of who is responsible for the project is moved towards either the IT or to the legal department or some operations department. Which is understandable because they know how that ties into their processes and into the organization. But ultimately, it's the director or the ones in the board that need to sign off. Now, this is also the big gap between ISO 27001 and NIS2, because I often hear that if you look at NIS2, if I'm ISO 27001 certified, then I'm almost done. Well, you are almost correct. If I am not compliant to ISO 27001, I will lose my certification, but there's no financial benefit from that, apart from you maybe losing customers, right? But which is still a big challenge. Let's be honest about that. But there is no fine being given because I don't follow the framework of ISO. That is different with NIS2 and DORA, where if they can find in case of an attack that you did not follow the rules and did not say yes to certain protective solutions or mitigating solutions, you are held responsible personally as board level member. How do you see that, Dr. Virgilius?
I think that one of the biggest misconceptions is that compliance is just paperwork. And many companies still see compliance as something bureaucratic, box fixing exercise done for auditors or regulators. But in reality, modern cybersecurity compliance frameworks are about organizational resilience. NIS2, for example, is not only about policies, it's about whether an organization can continue operating during a cyber incident. Management understands cyber risks, how they understand whether supply chains are secure, and whether incident response actually works. Another misconception is that compliance is only, like we said before, only an IT issue. In reality, cybersecurity today, it's a board level and management level responsibility.
Regarding this, maybe let's also look at where we're talking about how to implement the compliancy, but let's look a bit at the different sectors who it is important to comply to, because as Bjorn also mentioned, we have NIS2 where we have these 18, I think, different sectors that have to comply. But then we have directives like DORA for the financial sector. Keeping all this in mind, which sectors do you think are under the most pressure to actually meet this compliance, which should especially prioritize this particular session and listen to what is spoken so that they are aware of the issues? Dr. Virgilius, go ahead.
Dr. Virgilius.
Critical infrastructure operators and highly regulated sectors are naturally under the greatest pressure, like finance, healthcare, energy, telecommunications, transport, public sector organizations. But increasingly, medium-sized companies are also feeling pressure because they are part of larger supply chains. A smaller supply may think NIS2 does not apply directly to them, but if they work with banks, telecoms, energy providers, or public institutions, they will still be asked to demonstrate cybersecurity maturity. So pressure is moving through the entire system.
That's a very good point, especially like hearing as well that Bjorn mentioned that, for example, ISO is sometimes a requirement from partners as well, and we're kind of having this look into compliance not for one specific company, but as a supply chain so that we can ensure safety in everyone. On that note, also, I want to have a question from the audience. I will send you a poll, and we would like to see what kind of sectors do you actually belong to? So if you can, please write us a short answer so that we're aware of are you in the finance sector? Are you somewhere from healthcare, so that we can kind of adjust the seminar based on your answers. But coming back while we're getting those poll results as well, I was also thinking that supply chain, like those SMBs that are partners, Very great point again. But I was thinking that finance sector as well having a lot of regulation specifically directed at them. We have like GDPR, of course, which they will have to comply to. Then we have NIS2, and then we have also DORA and PCI DSS. So I feel like the sector as well is like getting a lot of attention, and kind of understandably, since they are very heavily targeted by cyber criminals.
Yeah, to partially answer your previous question and this one, what I see is that if you look at the large organizations, the ones that Dr. Virgilis already mentioned, like the banks, the insurance companies, the governments, the hospitals, they already follow a lot of these rules, guidelines, certifications, standards, directives, whatever you want to call it. So for them, it is not a new exercise to become compliant to a new standard. Where it starts to become a challenge is, what did I already do? And what should I do as, let's say, the white space that is now part of that new rule and regulation? Mm-hmm. And one of the things that is so important to look at this, and that answers your first and second question, is that most organizations that do not fall under these first two sectors, the critical ones and the important ones, they think it does not belong to me, so I'm not in scope. But you may not be directly in scope, but one of your customers, or you're part of a supply chain, so indirectly you are responsible. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that you want to be the best boy in the class or the best person in class, but it's better to be overqualified than underqualified, because if it does not apply to you right now, it may be in 2 months, 6 months from now. Yeah. And then you will lose your biggest customer.
Okay, on that note, let's view our results so that we can see what our audience actually wrote. So I see a big chunk of our listeners are from healthcare, actually, energy, technology, so all over the place. We have some from finance, we have some from cyber, but today then we will be focusing more on NIS2, because from all of the compliance for healthcare right now, this would be the most valuable one, and for the other sectors as well, from finance and energy. Okay, let's move on then. I will check really quickly if we have any questions in the Q&A box. Not at the moment, but keep in mind that you are able, as audience, to ask your questions there anytime. And let's move into our next segment, which will focus on compliance in the Baltics. When we zoom into our region specifically, Dr. Virgilis, can you give us a short dynamic on what you see regarding compliance that is important in our specific region?
Good question, $1 million question. I think in the Baltic region, the compliance landscape is becoming increasingly important, because cybersecurity is no longer like we many times say that not only as IT issue, NIS2 in the Baltic, compared to the rest of the Europe, I think that the picture in the Baltics is mixed, but generally the region is moving seriously on NIS2. Lithuania is among the countries that have already transposed NIS2 into national law through amendments to the cyber security law, which entered in force on October 24. With implementing rules following afterwards, Latvia has also adopted a national cybersecurity law implementing NIS2, but the European Commission still indicated in last year that Latvia had not fully notified complete transposition. So legally and procedurally, there are still some open elements. Estonia has been somewhat slower in the formal legislative process. Estonian bill transposing NIS2 passed in the first reading in Parliament in October 25. So compared to the rest of the Europe, the Baltics are not lagging in terms of awareness or policy seriousness, but the formal implementation timeline is different.
On that note, Bjorn, since you're also from the Netherlands, do you see... No, I'm not going to ask about the Baltics, but thinking of what Dr. Virgilius said, like, how is it going, the implementation of this particular directive in your country, or how do you see it in your region?
Great. It's not
Right.
going at all. No, just kidding. No. This is a painful point. We were almost done, and then our political system kind of had an issue with different parties not being in line with one another. So our cabinet dropped. They stopped working, and we had to go and vote for a new cabinet and the second chamber, essentially, which is now done, and they formed a new government, essentially. But that meant that any decision on rules and laws was stopped for a moment. Right now, we passed the second chamber, and it's now going to the first chamber, which is then being voted for and published in the how do you say that? We have a paper from the government where it officially needs to be published, because, for example, in Belgium, you can take a law and make it active and say it is applicable from, I don't know, July 1st this year. So you have time to adopt the grace period. But if you look at some other countries in the European Union, when a law passes and it is being adopted, it is immediately active. And if we did not agree upon that, which is the case in the Netherlands, we had to stop. So July 1st is our aim.
Okay. So, hearing what Virgilius mentioned, and you as well, seems like the actual implementation, as mostly it always happens, is very fragmented and different. Dr. Virgilius, what do you see as, what is the main difference that could cause like this, usually like very political question in general, because I guess this is depending all on politics, but what are your views on it?
I think the difference is not only legal timing, it's also about administrative model, supervisory practice, and how each country identifies and engages companies in scope. It's very different in each country. And there are several reasons, because speed of implementing NIS2 is very different in different countries. First, countries start from different positions. Some already had strong cybersecurity laws and institutions. Others had to build more from scratch. Second, NIS2 is not a narrow technical regulation. Like we said before, it affects many sectors, energy, transport, health, and others. That means many ministries, regulators, and stakeholders need to be involved. Another important factor is that during the transposition process, policymakers and decision makers quite often choose to not simply to implement the directive as it is, but to introduce additional national requirements or extend the scope further than strictly necessary. And this, of course, creates longer discussions, resistance from affected stakeholders, and more complicated legislative process. In many cases, a simpler and more harmonized approach could make implementation faster and clearer for business. Third, each country makes different policy choices. For example, how broad the scope should be, how strict supervision should be, whether approach is more consultative or enforcement driven, and how entities are identified. Finally, cybersecurity regulation is politically very sensitive. It touches business costs, national security is very important, especially in this geopolitical context, of course, and public sector capacity, enforcement power that naturally makes implementation slower and more complex.
On that note, would you think that having Well, since you mentioned as well that Latvia to Lithuania in comparison had a bit of a lighter approach to NIS2, I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
So in this aspect, do you think that the approach of having like these lighter initial requirements is easier for companies to adapt, or if they should focus on original NIS2 and fully implement with the intent that they will need to make the full changes anyways?
It's not simple question because, like I said, difference is not only legal
Mm-hmm.
time. It's we need to talk about administrative model, supervisory practice, and how they engage companies in scope because it's very different. It's not simple
Mm-hmm.
to answer in the 1 minute.
Uh, okay. We do have another question for you. So both of you can answer, but this is mostly directed at you, Virgilio. So we already had like this past lesson of GDPR and companies also having to implement GDPR requirements into their daily practice. Do you see any lessons learned that companies should keep in mind as well now when they have like these NIS2 requirements?
Yes, GDPR, it was first viable for all companies and countries. And I think we're here several lessons we can learn from GDPR. The first mistake would be to treat NIS2 as a purely legal exercise. With GDPR, many companies focused on policies and documents, but didn't always change internal behavior. With NIS2, that will not be enough, I think. The second mistake is leaving it only to the legal department or only to IT. NIS2 requires management involvement, risk ownership, incident response, supplier control, and business continuity. This, like we said before, this is a board level topic. The third mistake is waiting until enforcement starts. Under
Yeah.
GDPR, under GDPR, many organizations became active only when fines became real. With
Yeah.
NIS2, preparation takes time. You need governance, technical measures, procedures,
Yeah.
training, and supplier mapping. And the last mistake is underestimating documentation. It's if an incident happens, you will need to show not only what happened, but what you had done before it happened.
On that note, you also mentioned the deadlines on waiting until someone comes knocking at your door with a fine. So, how are the Baltics doing in this aspect? Like, are they waiting? Because I know in Lithuania and Kaseya already had some announcements regarding preparation dates and when they should be done.
Uh, I think Lithuania and KSC is very not so heavy, I think. We have many conversations, and they said, "No, don't be so scared, and we will see. We will go in the lightest way with
Mm-hmm.
this
And are companies keeping up? Like, are they keeping that timeline, or do you feel like they're still waiting until the very last moment to?
In Lithuania, we're always waiting last moment. And always we are sitting with big eyes and thinking what we will do if we do.
I feel like probably not only Lithuania problem, just humanity.
Here is special with this one.
Okay, so let's move on to our next segment. This one is a bit of a gamified version, just to make things more fun. So I will be telling you some statements, and the game is that you will have to tell me: do you believe this is truth, or do you believe this is a myth? Uh, Actually, some of these I feel like we already covered, but for the sake of it, let's go through it. So, first statement: compliance is the task of management and legal department. Uh, Dr. Virgilius, maybe you can.
Uh, I don't think that it's just for management.
Mm,
I think it should be combination. Technology tools are extremely important for monitoring, automation, with the visibility, but the compliance, it's not only technical. It also requires governance, organization culture, all
yeah.
organization, legal understanding, and risk management. That's why many companies benefit from combining internal ownership with external expertise. I think it must be not for just for management.
Yeah, I'm also thinking that a lot of those compliance also are talking about mm, awareness training for just regular employees as well. So I think we're talking about compliance. Who is taking ownership, let's say, and driving that compliancy. But at the end of the day, we also have like regular workers who, for GDPR as example, we have a lot of cases where they're not aware of like phishing threats or something like that, and then create these breaches, leak data, which also at the end of the day makes compliance not possible if you have like these breaches happening constantly.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Next one. Truth or myth? This one will be directed at you, Bjorn, because
Oh,
well, you work at a technology company, constantly developing new stuff. So, compliance stifles innovation.
well, from a vendor perspective, no, because we need to keep up.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's a myth
Mm-hmm.
because in this world, if you look at why, for example, frameworks like NIS2 were invented, was because we are constantly under attack. We need to have a framework that guides us through that. And the attackers are always one step ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So, from a security perspective, we need to keep on innovating because we use AI to improve our products. The cyber criminals use AI to test our abilities with those security products.
Mm-hmm.
So, every innovation made can be used for good and bad. See what happened with Claude, that is now being used to decide what to attack. I'm not going into the political discussion here, but it is a way where we can use a tool for good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where compliance can help us or with innovation because it requires us to mature our security as an organization. So there is a financial benefit because we open up new opportunities. Sorry, that's the salesy part. But on the other side, it's also I want to make sure that my customers are no longer attacked.
Mm-hmm. Uh, Also, just side note, when we're innovating, oftentimes it feels like we're just trying to get the optimum result, but if there's no that mindset that I have to innovate with security in mind, maybe that is when this process feels like the compliance is stifling, because oftentimes, well, compliance is about security, as mentioned.
True.
um, okay, next
If I
one.
may, a few
Yeah.
words
Yeah.
about this, but I don't think that compliance and innovation are opposites.
Hmm.
Poorly designed regulation can certainly slow innovation, and Europe sometimes struggles with over-regulation risks. We're always saying that in America they have the best innovation. In China, especially when we're talking about AI, China has the best copies and producing, and Europe has the best regulation, just
Yeah.
regulation,
Yeah.
uh, and sometimes it's not good.
Yeah. Um, on that note, moving on to the next truth or myth. Compliance is too expensive. Virgilio, maybe you can take over.
More expensive, maybe. Who knows? But one major compliance failure is almost always more expensive, and the financial cost it's only one part. Companies with this also face operational disruption, reputation damages, customer loss, legal consequences, and management liability. Today, cyber incidents can directly affect company valuation, investor confidence, and long-term competitiveness. The continuous compliance investment is usually far cheaper than recovering from a major incident.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so audience, keep in mind what these guests are saying, because it is really important to actually follow this advice. Next one then to Bjorn. Compliance is as important to SMBs as for large enterprises.
That's the truth. And it can be as little as my large customer will not do business with me because I'm not following their framework. Mm-hmm. But it can be just as important for new build organizations right now. If you try to set up your startup right now with the business mind, I want to be ISO and NIS2 compliant, or for whatever reason, or I want to follow those guidelines, great, do that, because it saves you a lot of effort down the line. Now, some of these standards require you to exist a couple of months because you cannot start out of thin air. So, like what Dr. Virgilius said, it takes time to become compliant. But if you have that in the DNA of your organization, as a small organization, it's way easier to grow to something big because it is already part of your culture, your DNA. Yeah, but it's easier said than done.
Building cybersecurity culture. I have another point as well. I very much like the Verizon's data breach report. I keep referencing it over and over again, but there was the fact that also, like, from security point of view, if we do compliance, it's just to ensure that we have secure systems, policies in place. SMBs are as likely to get breached and hacked into as enterprises as well, and the cost for them is huge because they may not have, like, for ransomware, let's say if someone breaks in, the cost for recovering data I think is around 115K for SMBs, so that can make or break a small business. Okay, so we talked some truths, some misconceptions, then we had a discussion of compliancy in the Baltics and overall intro. Now let's go into the next segment, so for practical advice, so that our listeners can actually take something out of this, and tool-wise or so on. So Bjorn, since you are our technical guy, you have a lot of experience with both IT and in the cybersec field, what would you recommend are the 3 steps that each listener should either evaluate if they have or take tomorrow to increase their security and compliancy for that matter?
I think with everything in security is you need to know what you have. So have a proper inventory of hardware, software, even your SaaS platforms, because we have more than we think. Because if you don't know what you have, you cannot protect it. Mm-hmm. The second one, and that is what Dr. Virgilius also mentioned a couple of times, NIS2 is all about cyber resilience. The ability to defend ourselves against being attacked, but also if we are under attack, can I isolate it in such a way that, as an example, only Camille's laptop is being isolated and the rest of the organization can continue to do their job? and the ability to then recover to a working state, because that is what cyber resilience actually is. So have a clear understanding of how business continuity looks like in your organization. Where is my data? How can I back it up? And also, how can I recover that? Because you're not... Backup is what they can all do. It's the recovery side that's the difficult thing. And the third one is, do I actually have a firm understanding who is responsible at every point in that plan? So have an incident response plan or a business continuity plan where I know who to call, what to do, and what my role is in that plan. And I don't care if you're a 5-man organization or a 50-man or a 500-man organization, that is what needs to be done to prepare yourself against any attack.
So know your assets, be able to isolate and back up.
Yep.
And have plans with clear guidance on who needs to do what.
Those are the 3 steps.
Yeah. Very good advice, especially the last one. I feel we have all this technology and sometimes not aware of who actually needs to take care of what steps.
Exactly.
Then another question would be, for these compliances, you also mentioned that even for SMBs, they can start immediately with trying to implement certain standards into their operations, because if they're building for the future, they might need it. But if ISO, let's say, not the clearest guidelines, are there any other standards that they could start with that would kind of have similar requirements, but then they could expand in the future to meet those ISO requirements, let's say?
Yeah, there is this American standard called NIST, the NIST framework, the security framework. It consists of 5 steps: identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. Sorry, that went really fast. But I think if you look at the NIST framework, under every one of these 5 items, they mention what type of solution you need for that. Now, that is a technical approach, let's be fair. But having said that, what is really important, if we look at those 5 items, we still remain in identify, protect, and detect phase. Hopefully, we are not continuously under attack, but then the detect phase and the response phase starts to occur. And that is where we rely on a lot of AI nowadays, because we think, hey, AI is the saving grace. That's not the case. It can help us, but it will not do everything.
Yeah.
And I'm happy with that, because they claim AI is putting us all out of our jobs. That's not the case, because, well, AI can be a great help, but it's not the only answer to everything. I think the NIST framework is a good one. But it's not the only one. There are so many smaller standards that you can investigate, but I think the NIST is one that is widely used on a global scale, and not to become NIST compliant, because that is a US standard, but that framework is relatively easy to just read through and go over and make sure that for everything, make a decision, does that apply to me, yes or no? Do I have a platform or a tool or an application that references to this? If not, skip it.
Okay.
Don't make it too hard on yourself, because compliance is a tough chapter, let's be fair.
Yeah, on that note as well, so for those who don't actually want to bother with compliance, is there a solution? Because, SOC as a service, we have CISO as a service as well. For them to get compliant, is one of these the fastest way? And if so, is there something, for example, as compliance as a service?
Good question. So let's assume that I am a bakery, but I have 5 shops or 5 retail outlets, and I become relatively large, and I do business to business and business to consumer. So at a point in time, I may want to look into compliance, not only for food regulations, but also because, well, I'm becoming larger, right? I need to mature my organization. So you're great in baking bread and making pastry, but you may not be good at protecting your point of sales computers and your ordering systems and your website. So he can do business with a managed service provider. Now, one misconception is that if I do business with an MSP, they are 100% responsible for everything that I am then doing on a technical perspective. That's not the case. You're still, as an organization, responsible for your own organization and the compliance of that. What you can do, however, is rent the intelligence from a managed service provider and say, can you do that for me? Now, this is where with NIS2, it starts to become interesting, because if I am 100% relying on that managed service provider offering me the point of sales and the web shop and whatever comes with it, that is their responsibility. But ultimately, the attack, if that happens to that bakery, the bakery is the first one that needs to respond with the help of the MSP. And then we will have the legal struggle after the fact, who is ultimately responsible for not protecting, if that was the case. I mean, being under attack is not a voluntary decision that happens to you, right? Just as vulnerabilities. We have them, we are under attack, we don't know when, but how well am I prepared for that and who to call? That is probably the mantra in this case.
So again, ambiguity and understanding who is responsible for what.
Exactly.
Especially when, getting these services, clear understanding is very important. We had a lot of focus on from end user, like customer point of view, but for, let's say, these MSPs, do you have any advice to them, like if they want to provide, let's say, compliance as a service, are there any tools that they should look into and have in their portfolio, especially since Kaseya is a company that heavily focuses on MSPs in general?
Yeah. Obviously, we do have a platform for that. There's a tool for that. Now, if you want to start small, you often see that it is an exercise where a lot of Excel files are being transferred. But that's great if I am doing this for myself. I can keep track of the requirements and the controls in an Excel file. Do I have that covered fully or partially, and make notes about how I do that, and then show some evidence with logging or whatever. That's great if you have one organization, but as a managed service provider, you may be facing 20, 40, 50 customers that all have the same question, and then keeping track in an Excel file is maybe not that scalable. And that is if I have only one standard. Let's assume that I have a customer with NIS2, DORA, and ISO. Great. Or maybe they do business with a bank and they do PCI DSS. Great, even better. Then you have 4 standards. How to keep track of that in an Excel file? Maybe not ideal. So there are online tools that can help you with the compliance discussion, keeping track who did what at what point in time. So auditability and accountability is really important. And those tools do not make you compliant, but help you keep track. Where are we?
Yeah. On that note, maybe you could give us a short intro onto what you can offer.
Yes. This is where the presentation started. Sorry. So this will be a part sales, and I'm sorry for that. But and some of it is aimed at managed service providers, but I think that the dialogue is around not only managed service providers. It's any organization that is now in this webinar. So we checked this a moment ago, and this should be working. Hold on. Can you confirm, Camille?
Yes.
It's visible? Yeah. Great.
We can see.
Okay, so it says here the MSP opportunity. It's the opportunity in general, right? There's a huge opportunity when we talk about compliance or NIS2 or whatever. Now, the content that you are going to see, the couple of slides that I have to share with you, is focused at NIS2, but I think replace that with DORA or ISO, similar things, or the AI Acts or something like that, right? So any one of these standards have consequences for you as an organization, but also in your supply chain. You're delivering those services to someone else. And I know that some of us are waiting until the moment is there and get the knock on the door. You should start working on it right now. But like what the second line says, it's not too late just yet. And Camille, you actually stole my thunder previously, because 3 is a really important number, right? Apart from it being the third prime, there are 3 actions that are linked to it. The first one is action. You don't want to lose your biggest customer because you are not compliant in a couple of weeks or a couple of months. So I urge you to act now, because it takes time to get everything in order to show that you are following the standards. The second one, most of these standards are around cyber resilience, NIS2 mainly, right? If I'm under attack, how can I withstand the attack? How can I isolate it, and how can I recover from it? Continuity, because it's not only me, but if I am the main supplier to one of my customers for that particular product that I'm selling, they are out of a product in no time. And then they will search their products elsewhere. And the third one is team. This is not a one-person show. It is a combination of board members, IT, providers, suppliers, and practically everyone that we have in this webinar today. And coincidentally, we see that the 3 items are ACT or ACT, so that is what we need to do, right? So why are you so important in this whole supply chain feature or this supply chain? Well, and again, sorry, this is aimed at managed service providers, but most people involved in compliance are the fire breaks. If I am under attack, make the analogy with a fire. I want to isolate it as quickly as possible. This is a fire break. This is if you have a forest fire, this is why there are lanes in large forests. So if there is a fire, it will not spread to the next side of the business, right? Managed service providers or IT professionals and compliance professionals have a role. Make sure that you know when to call them and where to call them. So how to address this with your customers? And this is, again, not focused only on MSPs, because you as an organization are also part of a supply chain. So this is an interactive slide that makes movement, sorry for that, but if you are falling under essential organizations or important, those are the 2 sectors that Camille was referring to previously. You already need to be compliant, right? You need to follow the framework of NIS2. But it may be that you're not classified as one of those. A managed service provider in many cases is not officially marked as an important organization or essential, although I beg to differ. I think they are essential because every organization is an IT organization. But what if you are a direct supplier? You need to be mostly compliant. Or if you are part of a supply chain and you're supplying one of the suppliers of an essential organization. Hope that still makes sense. Because in the end, what we all try to protect are interests in my organization, but also in my customer's organization. I want to protect the legal interests, the financial interests, my partnerships, my customers, my data, because let's be fair, we all have data. Data is key. Data is the part that we are using to offer our services. So that's really important. I'm noticing that I'm in front of the text. Sorry for that. So we have all types of interests that we want to protect. And I gave you the example of the bakery, but let's assume one of your customers is in the food sector. And I know that we have people in different sectors in our meeting today, and too bad it wasn't in the food supplies, but just to have a little bit of understanding that an average organization needs to create a log. Who am I doing business with? And what type of services am I taking from them? And am I 100% reliant on them, or 50 or 25%? Or do I have an alternative for that service? So if you take a food supply grocery store supply chain, so you see that they use internet, they use telecom, they use servers. Great. We all know about that. So the managed service provider and the telecom provider are important. But if we look at raw packaging material, I may have stock, but if my supplier of those raw materials and those packaging materials are out because they are under attack, at a point in time, my supply is finished. So I need to have an alternative. So what you see there is they need to create an inventory of what am I doing, who am I doing business with, and what is the impact if they are no longer delivering those services to me. That's a business impact analysis that you need to make. So again, coming back to this slide, you and or your customer may be somewhere on this line, or you can have multiple roles in that supply chain. Now, this is the salesy part. I'm sorry for that, but we have to cover this. We have a couple of solutions that are relevant for compliance. And let me quickly switch to this one. So for a compliance question, what you often see is that you need to do risk assessments. You need to have an incident response plan. You need to document everything that you do so you can read back what happened, what changes were made, how do we have a standard operating procedure, how do we solve certain things. Business continuity, going as simple as making backups of your files or of whole machines, and did you test it? Access control, physical and logical, MFA, for example, right? So we have on the left side, we have the need to solve a question, or on the right side, what type of tool you need, not only as an MSP, but also as an internal IT organization. And keep track of these and make sure that they're up to speed and that you have tested, that you can get out of it what you expect out of it. More than often with backups, backups are made, great. We see the logs, great. Did you test it? Because for emergency response exercises, we test by doing a fire drill. Why don't you do it for your backup, right? So make sure that you have done that. And that maybe a good tip as well is, if you have an incident response plan, make sure that you have it in a printed analog version or on a USB thumb drive outside your digital environment. Because if you are under attack and you need to isolate your whole environment, you no longer have access to those files. And it's relatively easy to just have a piece of paper that I can question with Camille's number on it. Maybe not, but you understand where I'm going. So I know who to contact at what point in time. Insurance documents, same thing. And I actually advise you not to store them in OneDrive, because what happens when you are under attack with ransomware, for example, right now they will focus on documents that say insurance or policy or in local languages. And this is where AI comes in. They will go through your data sets and see if they can find what kind of coverage you have for digital insurance. If that's 10 million, they will charge you 8 million. And as an SMB organization, I can say, listen, I don't have the 8 million to pay for ransom. Great, but you have an insurance policy for 10. So keep that document away from your online platforms. Keep it printed, because see this as the designated survivor. If you're under attack, you want to have that in a printed version so you can refer to it. Now, if you look at all those solutions, you can take separate modules that do something for you. Keep track of compliance, make sure that you have documentation in OneDrive. But in fairness, if you then need to combine that data to show when you're having an audit or when you are under investigation, you need to pull data from everywhere. It's better or easier if you have an integrated platform that has the data everywhere when you need it, in case you need it. Preferably with something called AI, and a demo is never complete if you haven't at least mentioned AI once, so here it is. So this is where Kaseya comes in. What we have is a platform that has all these separate modules that you can acquire through Hermitage, but also they are integrated. And what is so important, if we focus on compliance, and I hope this is visible on the other side because I realize the lines are not too thick, we need to have an opinion on what is happening on the endpoints, servers, workstations, laptops, mobile phones, the network. And then we need to have an opinion on cyber security, have a protective measure, and it can be one of our solutions, but at least have antivirus, EDR, because those will detect malware and suspicious behavior, and make sure that you have a risk management tool where I can say, this is the impact of an attack, and this is how I want it to respond. And cyber resilience is the part where backups and business continuity come in play. Now, again, what I mentioned earlier, a demo is not complete if you have not touched upon AI. I think we live in a day and age where AI can be very beneficial to a lot of us, right? It can be helpful in summarizing data. It can be helpful in offering us a solution for something, or taking mundane tasks and automating that. Because even an action based on a trigger is already called AI nowadays, which is stupid because we did that 20 years ago. That is called robotic process automation. But in combination with, if I'm making it very strict, if it is this, then that, then if it is not 100% this, it will not do that. And this is where AI comes in, where it says, hey, I see a correlation between these events. Shall I do it as well? So this is where AI is really helpful. And it can come with suggestions based on best practices. And that is where an AI-driven technician workflow can help the technician with the huge amount of alerts that are coming in their directions, right? And best practices, if I'm only focused on what is happening in my organization, I may be limited to what is happening with my customers or my environment. But if you can lean on a global organization that learns from global events and global alerts, similar to what you do with your antivirus and your vulnerability scanning, great, utilize that. So that is essentially helping you to become way more successful and efficient. Now, the last three slides, sorry, because I don't want to smother you to death with PowerPoint. We have a couple of solutions. They are all outlined with the squares here. Managed detection and response, or an EDR. So it's looking for suspicious behavior, but we can ask our SOC analysts and our platforms to help you out respond to those suspicious activities. But also monitor the dark web for credentials, because that is completely out of my hands, right? I may have registered for this webinar, and what if Zoom is under attack and all those accounts were leaked? Let's hope not, let's not jinx it. But then without you being in control, your email address and your registration is now in the hands of cyber criminals. And it happened more than often. Also, penetration testing. I may be in control over all the vulnerabilities that I have in my network, but the proof is in sitting down and invite a hacker into my network, not a cyber criminal. And I always say a hacker is a good one. There is no such thing as an ethical hacker because all hackers are ethical. As soon as they start selling stuff on the dark web, they become cyber criminals, right? So hackers are not bad people. Let's keep that. So those hackers will test how good your protective measures are. And funny enough, in most of these standards like NIS2 and DORA, they require you to do that annually, once a year. But I say, listen, don't do that just once a year, because as soon as I find those exploits and I start working on it, the world has changed. If I start patching my environment, the world has changed. So my pen test document is no longer valid. Do that on a quarterly basis, right? And make sure that inbound email and outbound email, make sure that data is coming in, is clean, but also that you're not sending out messages through email accounts that should not send that information. For example, if Camille is not responsible for sending out invoices, I want a data loss prevention filter saying, hey, Camille sent an invoice that was not okay. Not saying that that is the case, but hey ho. Why I'm saying this is be more in control over what data is going in and outside of your organization. This is a really great opportunity to set up purview if you work with M365 and classify data, because I think if you start doing that, your job will be easier. Last one, cyber resilience. I mentioned earlier that making sure that you can withstand an attack and recover from an attack is really important. We live in a day and age where we are no longer only protecting the server that is humming away in the cupboard underneath the stairs. Those servers and those platforms may be in Azure, in AWS, they may be somewhere else in a data center, but those platforms store data that is my data. I need to have a firm understanding what data is where, and do I have a backup for it, and do I test it? You don't want to find that out at the moment where you actually need to restore. And this is what I mentioned also during your event a couple of months ago. You're not selling or acquiring a backup solution. No, you're getting a restore process. And what I'm saying with that, if a backup solution doesn't make a backup, why is it even in the market? They probably make backups. It's about how fast do I have that data back? How much do I need to do? And is that a workable solution? So have the discussion with IT and the process owners what the interval is that I am willing to lose, the recovery point objective. Is that, am I willing to lose an hour or 10 minutes or 2 hours, half a day? And how fast do we need to be back online? Is it critical then? Most likely that recovery time objective is within an hour, but we have so many influences over there. So have that discussion. That's a really great exercise. And with that, I would actually like to give the mic back to Camille.
Thank you. So our today's session has come to an end, but before we fully finish, I would want to ask you both, Virgilijus and Bjorn, to give main 3 takeaways that you think, from your perspective, the listener should take from today's session. So maybe, Virgilio, we can start.
Thank you. And 3 things, I think, most important thing. Let's repeat, because it's really very, you hear it so many times, but it's really very important. Cybersecurity compliance, it's no longer only a regulatory issue. It's a business resilience and competitiveness issue. Second is NIS2 should not be approached as a paperwork. but as an opportunity to strengthen organizational maturity and trust. I really trust this words. And third thing is companies that start preparing early and build cybersecurity strategically will have a significant advantage in the future digital economy.
Thank you, Bjorn.
Well, I think I mentioned the three items. Don't wait any longer, just start. And maybe not today, but okay, tomorrow is early enough. I think the best moment to start was a year ago, but the next best moment is today or tomorrow, right? So start now. Make sure that you know what it is that you have, and make sure that you know who to call, because you're not in this alone. And that doesn't mean call Camille all of a sudden, all of us. That's good. It gives her a job, but that's not the intention. Make sure that you see where your blind spots are.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much to you, Dr. Virgilius, to you, Bjorn, for joining us today, for giving us our insights. So last thing to the audience, we talked a lot about compliance today because that was the topic, but if you want more information about Kaseya, about Hermitage Solutions and our products, you can contact us through the emails in the chat box, so info@Hermitage, EE, LV, or LT, depending on the country. And one last note is that if you go to our Hermitage Solutions webpage, you will also find some tables and information on what kind of tools might help you with specific standards. So we have NIS2 there, we have ISO, and based on that you can also see what kind of solutions we can offer and what they can cover for you. So Kaseya is a big one there as well. So come visit us, come contact us. Again, thank you everyone so much, and hope to see you all again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.